Good evening, everyone. This is Michelle Laura Romero with Rethinking Life. Today we have author Chris Reese, who wrote the book The End of One. Chris, can you tell us, let everybody know where they can find the book to begin with?
It is on Amazon. You can purchase it on Amazon as far as the paperback version or the downloadable version.
Okay. Is it available anywhere else?
It's available at Changing Hand Bookstore. It is in the bookstore here in town at the both Changing Hands.
Okay. Excellent. We're in Arizona for anyone who's wondering. So if you're in Arizona, you can go over to Changing Hands and pick up a copy, or you can go on Amazon.com and find The End of One. Now, Chris and I have known each other for a very long time. I have fortunately been around him to witness some of the fantastic health benefits that he writes about in his book. He has a lot of case studies in there. Chris really spreads the word for everyone. Anybody who's willing to listen, Chris is so good at what he wants to do is basically help everyone improve their health, because we just have so many people out here suffering needlessly. I talk about similar things in my book, but Chris really goes in depth in a scientific way with doctors and scientists,
even some lawyers,
to let us know some of the more specifics. Where do you want to take it from here?
I can tell you where we started.
Okay.
And a couple years ago, I wasn't any different than anyone else. As you know, we worked together for quite some time. And when my diet changed, the first thing that I noticed at work, where we work in that smoky environment, was that my congestion was gone. And so after about 2 weeks of a dairy-free diet, I knew that this is something that I was going to have to stick with, because this was a very significant problem that I've had at work for a long time. And the fact that it was gone in a matter of a couple weeks seemed very, it was one of the happiest days, as you were right there when it happened, as a matter of fact. And so that was a good day. So that very day is when I went home and started to go through my cabinets and started to look at what contained dairy. It wasn't necessarily lactose at the time, it was dairy. And as I started to eliminate those things from my diet, my health continued to slowly get better, and my congestion never came back. So 4 weeks into this, I was 100% positive that I was never going to be touching any dairy again, because 4 weeks into this, I hadn't had any congestion in a place that had congestion every day for years. And that's how it started. And from that point, when I decided to go dairy-free, that was at 4 weeks. In about 2 more weeks, at about the 6-week mark, is when I start to see significant changes happen. More than just the congestion being gone. The first thing I noticed was eczema on my right knuckles that had been there for approximately 2 to 3 years, that I was putting steroid cream on from the dermatologist, everything that they give you to get these things away. It would almost go away, but never quite, just really rough skin. Everybody kind of has it. That was the first thing that I noticed was gone, like 100% gone, like my skin had gotten better. Then the next thing was my dandruff had went away. The next thing was the dandruff that was in my ears that would come out with white flakes was gone. I had 3 warts on my right index finger that had fallen off, 1 on each forearm that had a wart that had fallen off. And as these things were happening to me, at first I was happy. Small things kept changing, that happiness turned into something that wasn't quite happy anymore. It was, what is going on here? Like, why did I change my diet, and why did a wart fall off, and why did dandruff go away? Because they don't have anything related. So that's where it started. And from that point forward, I started to look into why we were ingesting certain things and what could it possibly have to do with our health. And that moment in time has taken me to this book and to the top of the Mayo Clinic, where a doctor, his name is Dr. Snyder, has referred me to writing a book. And that's what I decided to do. And if I want to help people, this is where I begin.
Mm-hmm. I think that's so interesting what you're saying about all these symptoms, and they might be minor to you, but if you're suffering with those things, it's really not, and you might not even know. You just think, oh, it's part of aging. And
correct.
And same thing with me. Like, I grew up bowls of ice cream, pizza, milk, gallons of milk, cereal every morning.
Yeah, absolutely. I was born and raised in northern Minnesota, middle of dairy country. Every best friend I have to this day still lives on farms up there. That didn't move away and go somewhere else. But I'm very close to many people.
What I find is it's such a slow process of whatever is going on in your body, and you'll probably explain it further, but you're so used to drinking milk, even though they tell you it causes mucus. That's basically what they say. Like, they know that it causes mucus, but I could drink a glass of milk and not see any effects at that time. So I never connected the two until I removed it from my life. And then the same things that you're saying, like I grew up, I had chronic strep throat, tonsillitis. I had shingles when I was 12. Those are not normal. Like, I don't look at any of that as normal now. I don't think strep throat, sinus infections, bronchitis. I've been dairy-free for 4 years, and I still see people constantly saying, I have a chest cold, oh, I have allergies, and all these things. And I had allergies, but those things don't even cross my mind anymore. And I wish so much that I would have known that so many more years ago, because now there's so many substitutes for everything that we don't even have to.
Absolutely.
We don't have to miss out on everything. You can have ice cream and
absolutely Sprouts and Trader Joe's, or Whole Foods. There's many different places that carry substitutes that instead of using lactose, you're going to be using something in its place that are very, very good alternatives.
Thank goodness.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us, you have some fascinating stories in here about people who have literally changed their lives. One of them is your mother. I'm very interested in hearing her story, because I know people with the same condition that she has, and it's heart-wrenching to see someone going through certain things. And if anyone can be helped, we want to hear more about it.
Absolutely,
Please.
and I'd love to tell you about my mother. Let me tell you just a little bit on getting to her.
Okay.
As all of those things on myself was getting better. Like I said, this one thing was this, one thing was that, but none of them are related. So as I was researching them to find out what could possibly be any of these things have in common, the one thing that I could find as a common denominator in all of these things, I started, because when you're starting getting into the teens of things now, just 1, 2, 3, or 5, but now you got 15 things you're looking at that are getting caused by different things, and there's only one common denominator all the way across the board, and it was the immune system. Everything else was caused, 10 things caused this, but one of them was the immune. Its immune system was always something in every one of these. So that's how I began to look into, is lactose ingestion connected to our immune system somehow? Because my immune system obviously had changed if all of this other stuff had changed. So that's where it had started. And that took me to an intellectual property patent attorney. Her name was Hua Chen. And I went and met with her to ask her about what was going on inside her body. She has a degree in biochemistry, and she's obviously an intellectual property patent attorney, so knows many ideas that people have in their mind. And when I showed up at her door to have a meeting with her, it was obvious that, not her being rude, but she wasn't going to sit there and think somebody's going to come here and tell her they have a cure for cancer, per se, because that's kind of what she had in her mind when I was coming there. And I told her specifically when I got there that this is not a cure for cancer whatsoever. This enables cancer to happen. It's not curing anything. This doesn't cause it to happen. This lets cancer, or many other things, or a common cold for that matter, fester, where your immune system or lymphatic system that's supposed to be combating that isn't able to do that at that time. And this is where I'm connecting those dots. And when I went and met with her, it was clear that she wanted me out of her office within about 10 minutes. And when I asked her about if she wanted to hear my story, she said, what I want to hear is if you have something that's patentable. So my book was told to her in reverse order. What I started with, what was my theory about what lactose and how it was doing. And I started there, and 2 hours later, she was shaking my hand, hoping that I got to see her again in the future, and that somehow, some way, would be seeing each other again. And as far as a patent on my theory, I decided not to go towards that. I have kept in contact with Ms. Chen, and they did do all my non-disclosure agreements with my book with the book, with the publishing company and everything that we did. So they've stayed in the loop, and I've kept them in it as well. At that time is when after I talked to her, and when a biochemist that's also an intellectual property patent attorney had told me that she'd never heard anything like that, and if I was onto something, that if I could actually prove what I had just told her, that was patentable. So that was my very first pat on the butt that said I might be doing something right. So that is when I went and made my appointment for the Mayo Clinic, and to go through and see, why am I so healthy? What happened to me to get healthy when I wasn't prior? And so it took me it was about a 6-month wait to get into this consultative medicine program that happened in December of 2017 is when that happened. And that's where I met Dr. Snyder and the other team of doctors that I got to figure out, try to connect my dots onto how this lactose ingestion was actually disabling my lymphatic system and making me have my 2 sinus infections and my bronchitis every single year, and my eczema and my foot fungus and my everything else, my erectile dysfunction, every single thing that you can imagine that you just attribute to being 40, that you just think everybody has. Well, when it's going away one by one, and if you're not looking at why, then you're just a happy person. I was the other way. It didn't make me happy in the least to watch what was happening to my body when I thought that something was so good for me has now, in my mind, has now turned into something that might be having the exact opposite effect on my body. And in all actuality, that's pretty much what it turned out to be. That led me to my mother, and my mother was diagnosed with Parkinson's sometime in 2016. I'm not exactly sure when it was. It was obvious when her memory had started to fade and her mobility started to change that there was issues. And when she went to her neurologist in Chicago, she was diagnosed with Parkinson's, got on all the medication, and still it was rough going for her. After I got through with Ms. Chen, and I had a much better idea behind me that I could be confident enough to talk to my parents about this, and I knew my mom was having some trouble, and I talked to my dad and said, can you help my mom? Can you help her? And even though my dad didn't believe it, he wasn't hearing it at the time, he did help my mom, and because I could tell that she wanted it. And over time her speech got better. And then in November of 2017, so this would have been after the patent attorney, it would have been in April or May, so this would have been about 3 months after that, 3 or 4 months that I'd spoken to her. Now she's speaking where I can understand her, and she isn't forgetting what she's saying anymore. And that's when that was in August of 2017, and that's when I told my father that you have got to help her be 100%, because I know this can help her, Dad. And so he did it. And what happened between August to December was amazing. She lost about 25 pounds. Was able to started to go up and down stairs unassisted. Head to toe eczema was literally gone. A little bit was still on her calf areas, which is gone now, but all small things that were on her, including big ones like Parkinson's, all started to recede. And to this day, we have healthy 2-3 hour conversations, play games, and lead a life that she was never going to lead because of just a small diet change, 1 molecule, and she's brightening as the days go on. We'll put it that way.
Okay. So you're telling us that literally you and her and some of the other people that you are in communicating with this about, you have not changed anything else with your diets. You're saying lactose is the key ingredient,
Absolutely.
or whatever you want to say, however you want to put it,
yes,
to regaining your health. And
let me put it this way. I'll say that when it comes to our lymphatic system, something that's not talked about very often, most people don't even really know what it is. It is. There's 2 systems in our body: circulatory and lymphatic. Circulatory is obviously the blood. Lymphatic is all the white stuff that you see, and that's the part that nobody really understands. I'm saying that there's a lot of bad things that we put into our body. Many things do harm to us as we put them in, but only 1 molecule is taking our lymphatic system, a system that's supposed to be keeping us healthy, clean, and mended, and it's disrupting it, it's disabling it, and it's taking it and turning something that's supposed to be flowing like a river into flowing something more like quicksand. or a muddy river.
Yeah, well,
Put
just
it that
like
way.
when we see it coming out of us, the thick snot, the sticky mucus.
Yes.
So when, instead of, as you were demonstrating before with this bottle of water over here, Chris is saying that our lymphatic system should be flowing
90% water.
90% water. And so when you have snot coming out, that's an indicator that,
It's not 90% water anymore.
mhm.
Exactly.
And so all of these other things maybe are sticking
Correct.
and they can't flow through your body and exit in the way that they need to. I think that's fascinating. I'm fascinated by this. Really.
Thank you.
This is a game changer. So obviously you continued, you know, Chris and I, like I said, we've known each other, and so pretty much if you saw Chris was spreading the word to people about this, and you had quite a few people that are listening, and so it's been carrying on. But so what are the other symptoms, or maybe who else do you want to talk to us about that?
I can tell you the very first person I talked to was my stepson's best friend. And they grew up together. They were best friends since birth, basically. But Quentin has asthma and Dallas didn't. So
Okay.
they didn't get to run around and play games outside like most kids get to do. They were stuck inside. Quentin has always, his entire life, was a asthmatic, carrying the puffer, using your allergy pills person up until, you know, at this time I believe he was 19 or 20. I can't remember exactly his age, but as soon as I came back from the patent attorney, and I called Quentin and told, because when he had moved out here, and as soon as Dallas and Quentin graduated high school, they moved out, they got their own apartment, and when we got a phone call that Quentin was in the hospital, and he had pneumonia. He was in ICU. There was a ventilator. I mean, like, they were keeping him alive with this breather. It was like literally one of the most gut-wrenching things you could ever imagine, when it's not even your own son, but we're in charge of taking care of him. And so it was hard for me, you know, to see that. And I know what asthma is, and I know what causes it, or what you know, exasperates the symptoms, you know. And I know that when you can't breathe, it's because of the mucus, and he always told me that. And so when I seen that my mucus was gone and everything was changing, and what she had just told me, that she'd never heard anything like this before, I called Quentin and asked if he'd be interested in possibly changing his life and maybe seeing if something could be different. He's like, if this would do anything to help me, I would do it in a heartbeat. I said, try. I told him everything what happened and how I was doing it, and how I was going about the mission, not necessarily how I was doing lactose-free, but and in less than a month, I'd spoken with him, and he said that everything that was coming up got less and less. He's like, I'm going to keep doing this because I think you're right. And 3 months later, the same kid who couldn't even do anything, walk across the street, he is playing basketball for 3 hours at a crack right now. He's to the gym every day. He's living back out here now. He's in Arizona again, got his own company. He's got his game going on nice and strong, but he was a very highly asthmatic, highly mucus, highly lymphatically clogged person, and he has been 100% lactose free, only lactose free for about 2 years now himself, and has had nothing. You can imagine. He phoned me one day, and actually was with tears in his eyes. I couldn't see him, but I can hear him, you know. And he just said he said, for one, I can't believe he took the time to tell me about this, and two, he said, you have no idea how many years you've just added to my life by giving me this information. And to this day, we are very, very close, and we stay in contact about this, and we will stay close because of this for probably the rest of our lives. But he was number one when it comes to this. If there's an N of two, it'd be him.
Aww, that's sweet.
So, and he's a major part of this. Like, these couple people, my mom and Quentin, are really major
huge differences.
Major difference makers, you know. It wasn't just me, you know. But I had nice, close people that wanted to listen and were willing to see if something could change their life. I tell people that if you're 40 years old, well, how many months have you been alive? Is that 480? Isn't that, or something like that? You know. So what's two? What's two to see if you could change your life?
Taking just 2 months.
2 months might do something for you that you would never even believe. It could be the best, most amazing you've ever seen. And a clear thinker on top of it.
Yeah, it changes everything. More energy, clearer thinking, I think even emotions are linked to a
Absolutely.
clogged up lymphatic system. You can become overly sensitive emotionally, and depression is linked to
Absolutely.
all kinds of areas. I mean, like, it seems very, I think sometimes what people have a hard time grasping is because you're saying, what are you saying that, like, this symptom, this symptom, this symptom, like Chris was saying, can all be helped by removing dairy? That seems odd for people. But when you think of the way that the body is clearing out the toxins, you know, like through your lymphatic system, it's not, because it's that there are only two fluids in the body, blood and lymphatic. And so that's the sewer system of the body. And so if it's clogged up, you can't get all of these things out. And then that's where your genetic weaknesses are going to determine where you feel this. Like, mine was in my throat a lot. You know.
Absolutely. Mine was upper congestion in my head. You know, that's where my congestion was at.
And then Quentin's was in his chest.
Everybody's congestion is going to be in somewhere in a different spot. Typically, it will never be in two spots at once. If you have head congestion, typically it's not chest. And if you look up on it or start reading anything about the lymphatic system, it'll say that it's pretty much you're going to have one congested area or another, but it's hard to have two.
And it goes through your entire body, from
Absolutely.
your head to your toes. You could have stomach issues. It's the same lymphatic system that's clogging it up. It's the sewer system not allowing these toxins out so that you can feel better. And we would just love to challenge everyone to try it for 2 months. I don't know if you had any experiences of like detox symptoms. It sounds like with you, like your symptoms just kind of disappeared. You didn't have any detox symptoms with yours?
Not at all.
Okay, because mine was a little different. We do think differently. Our books are slightly different.
Excellent.
We both 100% believe in the dairy-free. But I did extensive hydrating and juice fasting when I also took out dairy. So when I would, in the summer, juice fast on watermelon, I would not be ill, but I would have thick brown mucus coming out of my nose. It sounds kind of gross, but it didn't hurt. Like I said, I wasn't sick, and then once it was out, I could feel that those acids that were trying to get out felt so much better. It's really amazing. So I did have some episodes like that, and then in the winter I would juice fast on oranges, and I wouldn't have the same results. But then as soon as I went back to watermelons in the summer, because they're just almost nothing except for water, it would just hydrate so much that it would flush out. I had like I started off wearing glasses, and then I did have LASIK, but then I went through a period of a year where I started eating poorly because I had moved, and so I was eating like that part of the U.S. of where I was. I started picking up the eating habits, and I started consuming dairy. This wasn't when I was vegan, and I just had all kind, like I was getting my allergies back. My eyes got bad again. I started having like depression, lack of motivation, anxiety, things that some of them I've never had before. And that was all just within a 1 year period of eating this very specific diet. And then when I came back to Phoenix, and I just knew, I was like in my late 30s, and I thought, if this is how things can change in 1 year and get so bad, no, this is, I'm going to change it right now. So I really got into juicing and fruits and veggies and went vegan, and literally everything just started to go away. And I feel like it makes you grow younger. You literally are. There's no reason when you're in your 40s that you should be having aches and pains and inflammation and, getting on medications and everything. But I think it is around 40 that people start to have some sort of chronic issue based off of the lifestyle that we've been living.
And I feel that it's based on something different. And lifestyle does does have something to do with it, but lifestyle doesn't necessarily change that much. Yours might have changed a little bit right then, but if in my book it clearly states that lactase persistence is what's stopping at about 40 for all of us. And lactase persistence that's the ability to produce the enzyme lactase that breaks lactose into glucose and galactose. And there's some of us Northern Europeans that are lucky that we get to break this down deep into life, where there's other minorities that don't get to break it down past weaning. And that whole formula of how long somebody gets to break it down also is going to play into when your crap is going to hit the fan, is when your lactase persistence ceases, is when you stop breaking down lactose, is when it's going to happen. Those minorities, Native Americans being the youngest to have lactase persistence cease, would be at weaning. And me being a Norwegian or Finn or Swede, anybody up in Northern Europe or Scandinavia is going to have. Let's put it this way. Where I'm from, Norwegians are 94% lactose tolerant to 6% intolerant. Native Americans are 0% lactose intolerant to lactose tolerant to 100% lactose intolerant.
After weaning.
After weaning. 6 out of 100 Norwegians can't have dairy after they're weaned. 0 of Native Americans should have dairy after they're weaned. And I've asked hundreds of Native Americans how much dairy they have. Hundreds. We work with Native Americans. And I have 2 Native Americans that have told me that they do not have dairy. And those 2 people are in my book. And out of 100 of Native Americans that I ask if they have dairy, 100 just tell me they have none. And instead it's the other way around. That's my main mission, is taking the information I have and taking it right to the people that I used to work with, that I still care very deeply about. And I'm still in the process of having meetings and making that happen as we speak.
Excellent. Spreading the word, helping people.
Thank you.
I love it. Proud of you for this.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's actually been quite fulfilling. We'll put it that way. It's been a lot of fun for me.
Yeah. You found your purpose.
It's a purpose. There's many purposes in life.
Yes.
You can't set yourself on one. I think that if you can complete one, then there's more to do. There's a lot of people to help, and we can do it.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate this.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to share?
No, I think that maybe in time we could maybe get back together, and there's many things we could talk about, I think.
Some updates.
Absolutely. There's definitely going to be some updates and some more information that we could probably go across, and I think that maybe we can get some people to understand what we're talking about.
And if anyone wants to have a private webcast with Chris and myself, we would love to help anyone get started on this journey. You can get a hold of us. Chris, how can we get a hold of you?
My email is cliffyreese1@hotmail.com. That's CLIFFYREESE1@hotmail.com.
And you can find me on my website, michelleLauraRomero.com. Please get a hold of us, and we challenge you to take 2 months and remove lactose from your diet. Email us, get a hold of us. We want to hear how you're doing and how it's changing your life.
Absolutely, and yes, we do.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.